You know what I want to do is just for a brief moment, because I'm going somewhere now to direct some of the things that we've learned together and put them into a logical state, okay? Let me just show you a couple of things. Number one, I think we've arrived fairly well at the premise that there is no such thing as spirit. Okay? There is no spirit. And of course that's the most important thing in religious circles is the Holy Spirit, our spiritual walk. I want to improve my spirit. And there is no such thing. It doesn't exist. Spirit, the word spirit, is simply a word that was invented to try and explain the invisible forces of nature that people didn't understand. So they couldn't understand it, they couldn't explain it, yet there is a force, an invisible force of nature. So it became spirit, spiritual. There was no such thing. Everything that exists is explainable. You may not understand it, so you can't explain it, but when somebody does understand it and they explain it to you, you say, oh. And that's the way it is. There has never been anything happen that does not have a logical explanation to it, because it happens by the interaction of these invisible things that the quantum physicists explain to us today, and the physicists explain to us today. It took quite a while before somebody, well, of course it wasn't too long. I'll tell you when the first word in reference to the invisible force, I think it was Aristotle or Pythagoras, whatever, talked about atoms. Okay. But, you know, these are things that haven't even been seen yet. And yet we know they exist, and this is tremendous for you. You can blow a whole city up with one of these things. Okay. So there is no such thing as spirit. Everything is actually electrical or scientific. Now, to tell you the truth, in the realm of how we explain it, there is no such thing as meditation. I know you meditate, but you don't really. Not in the context of the way we believe it, because people, they will write me all the time and say, well, what should I do? What should I think about? What's the difference what you think about? I mean, once again, there has to be a logical explanation here. What are you doing with this? You're sitting in the dark, and you're thinking about nothing. So what? Now what? You think about nothing, and everybody else is thinking about nothing, and so nobody's thinking about anything. So what? So we've spent a half hour of nobody thinking about anything. And we go up and we leave, and what happened? Nothing. Oh, this is great. Well, that makes, you know. So we're going back next week and do the same thing. Well, can't beat that. Right? You ever think of that? Well, I had a great meditation tonight. Did you really? What happened? Nothing. So it doesn't exist. It's not what you're there. What is going on in meditation is not nothing. It's everything, because what is happening there is actually not a nothingness through not thinking of anything, but a stimulation and an exercise of the nerve areas and passageways from the sacrum to the pineal gland that will allow those areas to start carrying the currents up to the brain. So in other words, what meditation really is exercising the electrical energy in your body so that it's capable of pushing the electricity up to the brain. If that doesn't happen, then it's really nothing. It's ridiculous. Nothing's going to happen. The whole basis of meditation is pushing the electricity up to the pineal gland and igniting an arc into the brain that opens the right side so that you understand. Otherwise, it's ridiculous. Doesn't make any sense. So that's what really it is. It's an exercise. You go and you take a look up the word pineal gland in the dictionary, and you'll see it's a vestige. What that word means is something that was very important at one time, but for a lack of use doesn't work anymore. Shriveled up, it's not possible to use it. But now what you're doing, you're exercising your physical body, so your physical body can carry the current up to the physical pineal gland that will light up the right side, so that then you are in a position to communicate with the energy which is outside, which is the first messenger. So basically, that's that's what all of this stuff is. So we reduce this down to a very logical and somewhat understandable concept of science and electricity. That's what this is about. A realistic thing. There is no hocus pocus. There is no things floating around. There are possibilities for you to make contact with a higher element of a higher intelligence if you are able to drive the electricity up and ignite the arc that will open gates and logic circuits of your brain. And yes, it requires you to sit and do nothing, but you've got to understand what the heck you're doing. Right? You have to understand it, and when you start to feel that energy, and you start to feel that electricity, and you start to feel that thing going up your spine, then you say, well, you know, geez, I meditated last week, I don't think I felt anything. Yeah, I understand that, but for 45 years you haven't done anything, and it just sat there and shriveled up. And all of a sudden we want tomorrow to turn it on. Well, actually the passageways couldn't contain the current. So it's all logic. But let's just look for a minute. You're not going to go deep into it because we've been over these things for several weeks. But let's just go for a few moments and take a look at the thing on page 71, which is fundamental particles. Just for a moment again, okay? And because now you're coming to church on Sunday, and instead of hearing about angels and demons and spirits, you're hearing about bosons. What the heck is that? Not bozos, boson. But bosons is a word that has to replace spirit. Can you deal with that? In other words, spirit's fine for the Middle Ages, but this is 1997. The atomic space age, and well, okay, we lived with this. We never could find this, but now we say, okay, we know that that's not, but we can live with bosons. That's a new word that we have to live with. So we replace spirit with bosons. And we look at that, and we find out that these are particles that have no mass, they're invisible, there's nothing to them, yet they transmit all the forces in the universe. Not some of the forces in the universe, all the forces in the universe. Well, you would say, I always thought that was God. That was the Spirit of God that controlled all the forces. Now you're finding out, no, it isn't. It's bosons. Same thing. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm not saying we take spirit and say there is no such thing. We just say we eliminate the word because that has misled us from understanding what's really going on, and say the spirit that is the universal force that transmits all of nature is actually boson. So we don't need a silly word anymore because we're not in kindergarten. Now we can go into college and we can understand what it really is. Okay? So when I say, and I think that's important to understand, if I say to you, there's no such thing as angels, I don't mean there's no such thing as angels. And that's the way I talk all the time anyhow. But what I'm saying is this. The angel that you have always called an angel is actually a person, a personality, an entity, an intelligence. And that it is really an angle of light outside that impacts causes an arc in your brain that opens a logic circuit so you can see and communicate with this person. So I'm not saying there is not such a person. I'm saying that what is being tried to convey to you now in this age of science, that we should understand how this works. Say. Now if you look at gauge boson on page 71, messenger particles carrying the fundamental forces of nature. The fundamental forces. You can be a fundamentalist. Fundamentalists are not fundamental at all. That's the problem with them. The berserk. I mean, it's the stuff that is bizarre, and it's all superstition. There's no fundamental. This is fundamental. You're getting down to the point of understanding what carries the fundamental forces of nature. And the most common of these is our old friend photon. Photon is light. And you can pick up this Bible and you'll see God is light. God is photon. So now you're starting to understand. And light that hits the earth creates life. See? And and not only, so then if God is photon, when God touches the earth, life is created. So you proved what you've always said religiously, but now you can document it scientifically because you understand how it happened. You're not throwing anything away. You're not saying there's no God. You're not saying that God doesn't create. You're saying you understand that whatever God is operates through photon to touch the earth, and through photosynthesis with chlorophyll causes life to come. Energy, cells. So you're just understanding how all of this works. When you get to understand how all of this works, you get to understand how you work, you get to understand how you make communication, how you make contact. And this is where you're at, as far as your studies are concerned, to get to a point where you can be trusted then to take this energy and to start applying it and to start using it, say. See, the messenger of God, which is light, cannot be seen. You can't see light here. But you can see because there is light here. Light makes you see. You can't see light. See? Now, if you look, you see second messengers on page 71. And notice these are chemicals. And the chemicals are produced within a cell in response to an extracellular signal. So then, you're able then to respond. There is inside of you a second messenger. And the second messenger is waiting to receive a message from the first messenger. And when that message comes from the first messenger, it activates this chemical inside of your body to the second messenger, which then allows the cells in your body to respond. That is how all the stuff you've come and you've prayed, and you've asked God to make this clear to you. Oh, God, do something. Oh, talk to me. I don't know where you are. I'm trying to find. But now you understand a logical explanation of how this works. The light touches you. The chemical reacts to the light. It causes the cells inside of you to respond. There is not one cell in your brain that can respond to spirit, because there is no such thing. It has to respond to a stimulation of energy, which in this case would be the boson, which would be the photon, which would be light. See? And remember in Jeremiah, it said, who can I speak to? Because their ears are uncircumcised. So you have to cut away all of your understanding. I mean, I know that, I was just looking down and I was saying, I know there was a lot of people that, skeptical. They belong in the skeptic clubs and things like that. I would be too. They should be. Because you've gone to church, you have to be very skeptical because it doesn't make any sense. But you can't be skeptical about science. Can you be skeptical that we're sitting here? I don't think so. And there's a logical explanation about it. Let me tell you what goes on. There's about 30 people in here. There are 30 secret worlds in here. 30 secret worlds. And each secret world is inside of a little cave. And it doesn't make any difference how close you are to the closest person, your children, your husband, your wife. They have no idea what goes on in your secret world. You'll allow so much. But when you walk away, you take your secret world with you. And you know what you do? You get outside amongst us and pretend. You pretend. And you pretend for one reason, so you can survive. How do I survive? And then people will come and tell you what to do, and you'll listen. You say, but when you walk out the door, your secret world says, because you have something else. You have another thing. And who is going to meet you in the secret world? It is photon and bosons in your secret world. You couldn't even conceive. Just think of somebody you may have been married to, or somebody, your children, and you sit there, you can't even conceive what's going on inside of the secret worlds of their head. It's all flippant. That's why people explain to people how to meditate. You can't. You're messing around with somebody else's secret world that you have no knowledge about, so you can't do that. So anyhow, when we look at the second messengers, and then we come up with this other thing, cyclic AMP. Cyclic AMP. So, my God, what is cyclic AMP? Cyclic AMP is the second messenger. And cyclic AMP, when you turn over to page 72, is formed by the action of a chemical on ATP. Now, you got the AMP and the FBI and the ATP and everything. You go to yourself, what do you learn on that church? Oh, yeah, about AMP, the AMP and the ATP and the FBI. The light comes from the sky. Light, do you realize, I had an email from a lady I was talking about this stuff, and a lady sent me an email and said, I understand what you're saying, but does light come from above? I mean, I would assume that what she's asking me, that she felt that her light comes from her lamp or something. Certainly light comes from above. The light comes from planets, it comes from the sun, it comes from the stars, and when the light comes from the sky, it touches the earth. And when it touches the green on the earth, it creates ATP. And ATP gives life to cells. Okay? That's what happens. So in other words, there can be no life unless the light touches the green. All the trees will stay. Trees are fine. Grass is fine. Bushes are fine. But you will dry up like a balloon with no air in it unless the light and the green interact with one another. What's inside of your body that interacts with the light? It's called hema, H-E-M-E, root of the word hemoglobin, hemoglobin. And it's the same as the chlorophyll in the plants. That's how you move. Lady just walked in here. She couldn't walk in here unless the light touched the green. I couldn't even be standing here talking. Imagine if the light was cut off from the green of the earth. Do you ever see a balloon when they let the air out of it? That's what happened to each one of you. They'd find nothing but each one of you laying under a chair somewhere. And the trees would laugh. Oh, look at that. They thought they were hot stuff. They used to cut me, stomp on me, rake the leaves. Look, what is this? You think? Because the trees can do fine without you and me. A lot better, in fact. Okay, so the light touches the green, creates ATP, and that gives energy to the cells inside of you. And now, we're finding that there is a chemical that reacts with the ATP, which is called, well, we won't get into the name, but anyhow, when this chemical reacts to the ATP, it is called the second messenger. And that's what stimulates the ability of your cells to respond to an extracellular signal. Now, you don't have to have any faith in this stuff. I didn't give you any New Age material. This is a scientific fact. This isn't even anything new. Do you know this is nothing new? This is an encyclopedia for years. So, you know, it's a fact. This is a fact. So we see the importance of what we call meditation if you want to make contact. If you want to be able to receive the message, if you want to be able to contact the message, then you've got to have this. But you've got to understand this. Now, go to page 781 in the Bible, and let's look. First of all, what part of your body reacts to the light that sets up the flow of all of this stuff? It's in the center of your brain, right in the center of your forehead, and it is called the pineal gland. It reacts to light. It's your time clock. It is activated by light. When there is no light, it then triggers the flow of melatonin into your body. And so that's why in meditation we have that, you know, medically and scientifically. But you have, the pineal gland is the site of the reception of the light. So in other words, when the light comes down to make its way to create the ATP and then the cyclic AMP so that you can have a second messenger, it's going to come to the pineal gland of the brain. That's your receptor for light, is the pineal gland of your brain. All right? So now, for thousands of years, it's referred to the single eye. Because you've seen in the Cyclops, you know, you got a guy, he's got two eyes here, and then he's got a third eye in the center of his head, which we've seen in this latest supernova. In page 781 in the book of Matthew, Matthew chapter 6, verse 22, the light of the body is the eye. If your eye be single, your body will fill with light. Okay. if your eye be single, your body will fill with light. So then the light is coming down. It's interacting with the hemoglobin in your body, okay? And then what is being told to you is that if you activate the pineal gland of the brain through meditation, then your body fills with this light. And the light then interacts with the chemicals inside of you to create AMP, which is the second messenger. And the second messenger then will open the logic circuits of the brain so you can respond. What do you know? You learned how God did this. After all these years. And it's no big deal. Light touches the pineal gland, interacts with the hemoglobin inside of you, gives energy to the cells. A chemical then inside of you reacts, called AMP, which is the second messenger, so that you can respond and your body can respond to quote-unquote God. And so this is the way this works. So the light of the body is the eye, if your eye be single. So you're told the importance of the pineal gland of the brain. The pineal gland of the brain is extremely important to receive the light so that all of these chemical functions can take place. There is nothing spiritual, there is nothing holy, there is nothing religious, there is no saints, there is no angels, there is no gods. What is there? There's bosons, ATP, AMP, photons, pineal glands, and all of this stuff, and that's the way God does it. And if you try to take it any other way, you run away from God, and you haven't a clue. But all you have to do is simply understand a basic principle of how this works, and you're in tune with God. Now you and God can interact with one another. You know, it's like God's got a telephone. He calls you. You don't have a phone. And all I say to you now, look, let me tell you something. This is what you do. You get a phone. You can go to Radio Shack and you get a telephone. Okay. Once you get the telephone, then you've got to connect it to the power. When you do that, then you'll hear a bell. And when you pick up, you'll be able to talk to God. But you can't unless you've got a phone. Now, you may not understand what a phone is. So I'll show you a picture of a phone, or I'll tell you of a phone. See, somebody told me this the other day. It's really interesting. You know what the first form of communication was? You know, drums. On one hill to another, boom, 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 boom. Smoke, oh, boom, 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 boom. And then, you know what they did? They used to ring bells. In one church, they would ring bells. And then another place, they'd ring a bell. And then in the temples, they would ring bells from town to town to town. And they could communicate. We talk about Gates, Bill Gates, and the logic Gates computers. Who made the phone? What was his name? What? Bell. Sure. See, and that was the first way of signaling. They still do even go to church now. They ring bells and people get up. Ring another bell, they get down. Okay? So we begin to understand how this works. Now, we look here and say, okay, if my eye be single, this is what Jesus said. Now we go way back into the Bible on page 28. And we look at Genesis chapter 32. Way back in the Bible, page 28. Genesis 32. So you don't have to be a physicist. You don't have to be a scientist. You don't have to be a chemist of some kind. I'm simply telling you how your head works. How it works. And that there is something called light that touches the earth and carries a signal to you, an extracellular signal, that you can respond once you know how this works. Okay? Okay. So in Genesis chapter 32 on page 28, verse 30, and Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face. You can't see God face to face. But what happens? What touches the pineal face? Light. Basically, what's being said there, my life has been preserved because through the pineal gland, I have received the light. Jesus says, if your eye be single, your body will fill with light. This guy says, this is the pineal gland. This is God. Certainly this is God. God is light. God sends the message. God is the messenger. And he has placed inside of you the second messenger ready to respond. That's very good. So what we're trying to do then, if we define logically the reaction or the interaction between the brain, the photon, and redefine spirit, we do the same thing with meditation. Look, when we're talking about meditation, I said exercising this area, the spine, so that the energy, the electrical energy, can flow up the spine and impact the pineal gland. That's what you have to do, because you've never done that. I would not be able, if I was going to exercise right now, be bad news. Everything would get sore and I couldn't do it very much because I don't do that. But just imagine it's the same thing that happens inside of you when you don't exercise that part of your body that carries the current up to the pineal gland. It's bad news, and you can't expect, and you shouldn't expect, and it won't happen tomorrow. But if you look at a dictionary, you'll find, like I said, the pineal gland is a vestige, and it's a visible trace, evidence, or sign of something that once existed but doesn't exist anymore. Or it says, a rudimentary or degenerate, usually non-functioning structure that is the remnant of an organ or a part that was fully developed or functioning in a preceding generation. A remnant of an organ that was fully developed or functioning in a preceding generation. What did you just read? A guy thousands of years ago says, I have seen God face to face. I'll call the place Peniel. You can't say that. Because you can go to all the places that try to find God. You can go to the Muslim places, you can go to the Buddha, you can go to Catholic, Baptist, Methodist, whatever they have, and walk in the door and ask them about the pineal gland, and they'll look at you. They don't know. They haven't an idea what you're talking about. But Jacob called the name of the place Peniel because he saw God. So here's something written thousands of years ago. A guy calls the name of the place Pineal gland. Have any of your priests, have any of your ministers, have any of these people ever said, I wonder what he's talking about? What does that mean? Could that be anything logical? Of course not. And so we don't even think it. So from lack of use, the pineal becomes a vestige. It's no longer fully developed as it was. It doesn't operate the way that it does. And look at page 847 of the Bible. Look what happens when you don't meditate. Look what happens when you don't enter within yourself. Look what occurs here when you don't make this effort of stimulating the electrical energy inside of you. And it's in Luke 11. And look what it is in verse 52. Woe unto you lawyers, as Bible teachers. You have taken away the key of knowledge because you entered not in yourselves. And then that were entering in, you hid it. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? Whether you go to high school, whether you go to college, what are you trying? You're being a success. What's that mean? Want to be a success like Elvis Presley? Nobody was more successful. Most successful man that ever picked up a guitar. But 42, he's dead. Oh, that's great, yeah. He lives on. No, he doesn't. All his friends are having fun with all of his stuff, but I mean, where is he? Marilyn Monroe, the most beautiful woman that ever lived. What happened? Marlon Brando. His success? He weighs 800 pounds. He's got a son that's in jail for murder and his daughter committed suicide. This is a success. There is no such thing. Have you ever heard of what is your, because whatever you accomplish on this earth on the left side in reaching a point where you say, this is what I want, within a very, very short time, a zinger will come. Because now you got to pay for it. And all of the things that happen now, the doctor comes and says, you got this or that or whatever. And so success doesn't exist. Why? Because we're trying to get it on the left side. And what does Jesus say? Casting it to the right side. There's no way. Did you ever notice you've gotten older? And you're still trying to find what you were always looking for? Because what life does, it's like the greyhound chases the rabbit. As soon as you get closer, zip, they pull the rabbit ahead. Ah, where'd it go? See, it doesn't work, does it? It'll never work. When you die, and everyone will die, the day before you die, you'll be looking for success. How can I get out of this? Look of Frank Sinatra. Nobody, old blue eyes. Nobody was more sick. The guy weighs about 60 pounds. He's 80-some-odd years old. He can't talk. He's laying in a bed somewhere getting Freddie in the bed. Can't even go to the bathroom. What is this? What is that? That's it. It says he's still planning his next show. But you see what I'm saying to you? What I'm saying to you is the reason these things go that way is because here's your head. You've got 10% to fool with, and the 90%, which is the garden, and this is where we stay. And we wonder why this is all screwed up. You can't work this way. So you have to then learn about all of these different functions that are inside of you so you can make this work. Meditation is not sitting down and doing that. And it says here, and I didn't make a copy of this for you. In vertebrae, muscles, and brain cells, excess ATP can join with creatine to provide a reserve energy store. That's what we were, a reserve. And it says the release of 2-phosphate groups from ATP by the enzyme blah blah forms AMP. Okay, now, wait a minute. Now wait, now I'm going to show you something. Let's just look at this. Big page. The release of phosphate groups from ATP. Remember how ATP is formed? The light touches the green earth and makes ATP, which is the light. Now, the releases of 2 enzymes, 2 phosphate groups from ATP, forms AMP. And remember, we found that AMP is the second messenger, okay? Now listen to this. AMP, a nucleotide component of nucleic acids, the material of DNA. Go on again. The release of 2 phosphate groups from ATP, the light hitting the green of the earth, makes ATP, your green light hanging out the back door, okay, forms AMP, which is the second messenger inside of you that communicates with God, okay, which is the material of DNA. All right? So you see what I'm talking about here. This is a big deal. All of a sudden, they can track anybody that ever spit. You couldn't even go. They could come in this room and find parts of you in here, even if you've only come in here one time. See if you can find a part of bacteria in your blood. Yeah, there's a little stuff here. That's her, all right. How is this possible? And it's all connected. You can't have DNA. You see what this is all about? You cannot have DNA without AMP, the second messenger. And you can't have AMP without ATP, which is the light that touches the green earth. Light touches the green, that's why you got a green light bulb. The light touches the green earth. You got the second messenger, you got DNA. Now, there's reason this is very, very important in this photosynthesis. Now, we have this interaction of ATP, the green light, and AMP, the second messenger, forming the material that's DNA. See? And what's so interesting about that? Go to page 296. What I'm going to show you down the road as we go along here is what are you doing when you talk about meditating and you're reconstructing it? Well, you know what you're doing? Let me tell you something. Just stop. Don't look for a minute. For thousands of years, and you can see it to this day, you go to Israel, and there is a place in Jerusalem that is a Muslim place called the Dome of the Rock. The Dome of the Rock formerly was the place where Solomon's temple, which was destroyed, stood. The Jewish community is waiting and has always waited for the rebuilding of the second temple. Right? Now this is very important for what I'm about to tell you. Listen very carefully to it. When you go into meditation, you are physically rebuilding the second temple. The rebuilding of the second temple happens inside of you. Now you can understand. You can understand what's going to happen. Once this temple is built, then this is the place where God, this is the place where you and God enter into the temple and interact with one another. This is where all of this happens. Now let me just show you something. We talked about ATP. We know about that. The light touches the green earth, gives the energy to the cells, creates AMP, which is the second messenger, which triggers a response in the cells to the light. And this is what these two things together make DNA. Now, if you look on page 296 in the Bible, in 1 Kings chapter 6, look at the construction of the temple. You with me? Look at the construction of the temple. 1 Kings chapter 6, look at verse 8. Okay? 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 8. The door for the middle chamber was in the right side of the house. And they went up with winding stairs into the middle chamber and out of the middle into the third. Can you just cut the lights down a little bit? Let me show you something. You see this? You see the winding stairs? What is it? DNA. Read it again. The door for the middle chamber was in the right side of the house, and they went up with winding stairs. Did you ever see a better picture of winding stairs than that? That's DNA. That's what comes when the light touches the green earth, creates the energy inside of you, the chemical AMP, and they combine to make DNA, and there it is. So there's the winding stairs. Okay? All right. So we have that. That's DNA. All right, you want to turn the lights on? Now, what I wanted to show you is that the door for the middle chamber. So let's look at this. We have the winding stairs. And we have DNA. And that's why you have a green light that's back there. Because this is about to come down very quickly on the earth. And I'm not telling you, I'm not making up a thing here. What I'm telling you is a fact. This is scientific, documented fact. Okay? So the winding stairs of the DNA. Is that enough? No, it's not enough. Could you just turn it off? It's not enough to reach a conclusion. But look at page 10 of the material. Do you bring your stuff with you? If you can look at page 10. Because it says the door for the middle chamber was in the right side of the house. And look what it says here on page 10. The third ventricle is the cavity of the interbrain. It is a narrow crevice between the two optic thalami. It is, the middle chamber is the third ventricle of the brain. The middle chamber. And the door is in the right side, which is the right hemisphere of the brain. The door for the third ventricle, or the middle chamber, and you go up with winding stairs, which is the DNA. Which is also, quite coincidentally, what the Hindus and what we say is the serpentine motion of electricity, which runs up the spine. Okay? Now, the reference to the right is the right hemisphere, the winding stairs of the DNA. The DNA is the second messenger into the middle chamber. Now look what it says. Back to 1 Kings 6:8. They went up with winding stairs into the middle chamber, out of the middle chamber, into the third. The third what? The third ventricle of the brain. The third ventricle of the brain is where Pegasus is. The third ventricle of the brain is where Ammon's horn is. The third ventricle of the brain is where the hippocampus is, which is the point of memory. Inside of the hippocampus is RAM. Inside of the hippocampus is the hem of the garment. All of these things are in the third ventricle, and this is where this energy rises up in a serpentine motion, up the winding stairs, to show you into the middle chamber, which is the third ventricle, out into the third. So meditation is not sitting in the dark. Meditation is fulfilling the promise of something that is going to be replayed. Before you came here, look, you read a moment ago, what did Jesus say? You take away the key because you don't enter within yourself. In other words, what is it that was a problem that you didn't understand? And maybe you still have the problem, but you're on the verge of solving the problem. What is it that was the problem is that inside of you was desolate. You never went there, other than to the left side to take part in these freaking movies that goes on inside of our heads all the time. You know, you have double features playing in your head all the time, chaos and confusion, and you're in there running these movies constantly. You know, dealing with this. You know, you conversing with yourself all the time. You talk to yourself 1,000 times more than you talk to anybody else. And you answer. But it's true, see. That's your secret world, and that's what this is all about. It has nothing to do with all this bedlam. Who cares? You know, whether somebody goes, they go in a creek and stick their head in the water. What's that got to do with anything? You're talking about your secret world inside of here. And so now we learn that the reason that you never knew is because inside here was desolate. Did you ever go there? No, you never went there. You never knew anything was there because in your religion told you don't go there. So it was desolate. And that desolation, according to Jesus, is an abomination to God. In other words, God's saying, the reason you got all the crap in your life, the reason you got all the sicknesses in your life, the reason you drop bombs in everywhere, the reason that kids get raped and beat up and all of these terrible things happen is because there is desolation in the temple. And to God, that's an abomination. That's the most horrible thing in the world, that this place that he provided for you to find the answers to the universal nature of life is desolate. Now, okay? Meditation is fulfilling a promise. And let me show you what this is. It's the most important hope that exists within the minds of the Jews, but they're waiting for the construction of the temple. Go to page 735. We'll keep you but a few more minutes and we'll be out of here. But go to page 735. In the book of Daniel, in Daniel chapter 11, in Daniel chapter 11 and verse 31, it says, "And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that makes desolation." What's your daily sacrifice? Oh, sacrificing yourself. And they took it away from you. They even said, don't do that. Stay away from that. You'll open your mind to devil. Come to church and we'll sing songs and I'll tell you what to do. And so the holy place became desolate. Read it again. They shall pollute the sanctuary of strength. What is the sanctuary? Dura Mater, Pia Mater, Arachnoid. The holy place, the most holy place, the veil. They shall pollute the sanctuary of strength and shall take away the daily sacrifice. Before you got near this place, you didn't go near yourself. There was no longer a daily sacrifice. There was no longer searching inside of yourself. It was gone. And who took it away? Who was the they that took it away? The holy ones. The church people. The people with the robes. They said, don't. Stay away from that stuff. They are the ones that when we make the sacrifice here, they are the ones up there that say there's evil going on down there. They took away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that makes desolate. Okay? Remember what Jesus says? You take away the key because you don't enter within yourself. Remember, the pineal gland becomes a vestige. It's not working anymore. Because they said, don't go there. So there's nobody to pull out the weeds. There's nobody to till the soil. There's nobody to feed. It's a desolate place. And according to God, it's an abomination of desolation. And look at chapter 12 of where you're at in Daniel, chapter 12. Look at verse 11. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that makes desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Don't worry about the days right now, the time figure. The abomination is desolation. Now, what you then have to understand is that once you are aware that your holy place is desolate, then you have to be aware that that desolation is an abomination to God. It doesn't make any difference how good you are or all the things that you do. The holy place is desolate. There is no way that he can communicate with you. There's no way the second messenger can communicate back. It's impossible. The place is desolate. There's nobody there. So just bear with me a few more minutes. Go to page 801. And in Matthew, look at chapter 24. And in Matthew chapter 24, look at verse 15. When you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, when you recognize the fact that your holy place is desolate, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, whoever reads this, let him understand, then flee into the mountains. Don't come down out of your house. In other words, what's being said to you is get up to the high place. Get up to the high place. Because now you understand that you've got a problem. And the problem is that the most important thing that you have in your body is desolate, barren, sick. And that's the mind. We do. Well, how do we know that? Where's the abomination of desolation? In Jerusalem. See? The physical abomination of that is in Jerusalem. So the Jews figured, well, somehow we got to blow this place up and put our place back. That's a building. No, the abomination of desolation is in Jerusalem. Inside of us, Dura Mater, Pia Mater, Tender Mother. Tender mother. That's inside of you. Tender mother. The most sensitive part of your brain. Open to page 953. 953 and the book of Galatians. Galatians chapter 4. Okay. For this, okay, you there? Galatians chapter 4, verse 25. For this Hagar is Mount Sinai and answers to Jerusalem, which now is and is in bondage with her children. That's the Jerusalem where this building is. But Jerusalem, which is above, is free, which is the mother of the soul, Pia Mater. The desolate temple is in yourself. The sanctuary where the abomination of desolation is within yourself, where nobody goes there anymore. And jackals scream in the night to scare the hell out of you, and all kinds of weird things roam through there that you don't know about because you don't go there anymore. So you have to climb what? The winding stairs to the middle chamber, and you have to rebuild the tabernacle. And this must be done according to a pattern. See, I couldn't tell you this unless I knew the pattern. But I do know the pattern, and you know the pattern. And what is the pattern? Exodus 26:33, hang up the veil, that you may bring it inside, and the veil shall divide between you, between the holy place and the most holy place. Dura Mater, the hard mother, Pia Mater, tender mother, Arachnoid, the veil. Your brain is the holy place. Look on the stuff that I gave you on page 25, on the material that you have with you. If you look there, you see it. You'll see your brain. You'll see the innermost layer is Pia Mater. The outermost layer is Dura Mater. And between Dura and the inner mater is Arachnoid. So meditation is internal exercise of the internal electrical mechanism so that energy can follow the AMP upward. So, and the reason that you're going upward is you're in the process of rebuilding the sanctuary of the brain. The second temple is the most important prophecy in religion. When the second temple is constructed, God appears. That's the most important thing in religion. And the second temple is your brain. Huh? The wilderness where no one goes. And the results on the planet Earth are obvious. See? And there's a lot of people that when I talk about God as energy, God as light, and say, well, they're looking for someone who's a personality. They're looking for someone who has love. They're looking for someone who has compassion. They're looking for someone who has understanding. And you're just saying it's light. That's not. But see, what they don't understand is that when this light interacts with the ANT, the AMP, and then sets up the second messenger, then there is a connection. And this photon, this intelligence, which is light, contacts that light which is within you. And then there is an interaction which translates itself into understanding, which translates itself into compassion, which translates itself in healing, which translates itself into understanding. We are then able to see God, hear God, understand God, and be part of a new Father, Mother, Lover, caring, a universal being of light. Why? Because we have replaced the abomination of desolation. We have rebuilt the temple, and we have built it in silence, traveling up the winding stairs, up into the middle chamber, out of the middle chamber, into the third, and there in part of our meditation and understanding, the light interacts with us, and the electricity which is constructed by God to convey to us this wisdom so that we can then meet God face to face. We have the photon, which produces the extracellular signal, which causes a reaction to produce a response, which is AMP, which is formed by the green light. Okay? So you know how it's done. You know what it is. And you know why it is so important to do this work. And you know why it doesn't mean coming to meditation and relaxing. It's just the opposite. It is work. It's exercise, exercise, exercise. And you are exercising. You are waking up that part of you, the center part of you, from the sacrum up the spine to the brain. You are waking it up so that it is capable of carrying the current. You are driving this plow down through the earth, and you are excavating so that the dirt is cleared away, so that this water, this oil can flow upward, back up to the pineal gland and throw open the right side. So that then there can be a response from the second messenger to the extracellular first messenger, which is photon, which is God. And there you will sit, and the temple will be beautiful, and the light will shine in the temple, and you will walk through the golden doors of your temple, and Pia Matra will stand there, and Pia Matra will take you to the throne. And there, just as Jacob said, I have seen God face to face, and I will call the place Peniel. How simple it is for you to do this if you're willing to do the exercise. And it's so close, because now we not only know that this is happening within ourselves, but we have seen the same single eye. We have seen this same pineal gland of God in the sky. What more beautiful sign that this is true? What more knowledge can you have that the temple is your brain than the Stedman's medical information you have describing exactly the construction of the temple and your brain? What more beautiful proof can you have of Jerusalem than the Bible saying, no, it's not the Jerusalem there, it's the Jerusalem which is above, which is Mother, Pia Matra. So go and begin and continue the work on your temple. Rebuild the temple. Construct the second temple and return to the temple of God, which is within you. And there, I promise you, you will, as this fellow did, meet him, her, face to face. Very, very close. And given to those who understand. So what Jesus always says, if you have ears, listen. Thank you very much. And we'll see you. Bye-bye.